Any adjournment matters? The Honourable Member for Bass. Finlay.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I seek the leave of the House to table a document which is a community petition that's been prepared by the community but unfortunately does not conform with the standing orders.
The question is that leave be granted. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Or to the contrary say no. The ayes have it.
Thank you. I'll just read it into the Hansard before I pass it to the clerks. So the petition reads, we, the undersigned, wish to register our extreme concern about the detrimental impact on the health and wellbeing of customers at the Beauty Point Tourist Park. The park's ageing demographic comprises single men and women, older couples, ATSIers and others with diagnosed mental and physical health issues. Specifically, they're concerned about the park and they seek an immediate 6-month moratorium on actions or changes proposed by the Managing Director, urgent mediation to discuss and resolve issues affecting the tenure and quiet enjoyment of our lodgings, oversight of the park management by a regulatory body in compliance with the Residential Parks Act, and an independently chaired committee for residents and park management to raise and resolve any ongoing issues. The petition was organised in the community around a number of concerns, and it follows a letter sent to the Premier and to a number of other ministers by the West Tamar Council. The West Tamar Council moved a motion at their meeting of the 19th of March and as a result of that motion, they were compelled to write a letter to government to raise a number of issues, to seek to review legislation, with that review ideally looking at enhancing security for tenure, establishing grievance procedures, including minimum standards for facilities and services, and providing operators with clearer guidelines for the management of tenancies in their site. They're also seeking for an interim measure, being a memorandum of understanding, to formulate guidelines which safeguard the rights of long-term occupants. The concluding comments in the letter indicate that it's paramount to the West Tamar Council to prevent long-term occupants from facing abrupt evictions, resolving compliance issues in parks and ensuring the overall viability of caravan park businesses. These proposed actions strive to address the immediate concerns of long-term occupants, striking a balance with owners, and should lead to better outcomes for all parties. And the Council was looking forward to receiving a response as a matter of urgency. The petition, the letter from the Council, follow a constituent question that I posed to the Premier this morning in regards to this government acting with urgency to seek to clarify the circumstances for long-term residents and park operators, not just where these constituents live in Beauty Point, but also for anyone else finding themselves in these circumstances across Tasmania. So I'm pleased with the support of the House to be able to table that petition. That petition had 2,108 signatories, so significant concern being expressed by the community seeking to have urgent action. I know that across the community there are a number of reasons why people find themselves living in caravan parks, why they purchase an asset and they choose to call it home. And I've had the pleasure of meeting a number of people that live at the caravan park at Beauty Point, people that have chosen to retire from across the country to Tasmania, coming to seek the moderate temperatures that we have here and the nice seasons that we have here, and to have enjoyment pretty much on the edge on a waterfront property. There are people that have chosen to move there because as they progress through life, it is home in their community and it's somewhere that they can secure their future and stay in their local community. And other members of the community that, for a variety of reasons, find that it financially suits their purposes. And so there is a real feeling within the collective community locally at Beauty Point, throughout the greater West Tamar community, and we've heard from people actually from different places as well, aware of the concerns, for people to want to stand up for and care for the security and safety and ongoing enjoyment, quiet enjoyment of the properties that they occupy at Beauty Point. So thank you for the House for accepting the petition. I'm keen to hear the response of the Premier, who's just arrived in the House from the constituent question this morning, and I'm sure that the West Tamar Council are keen to have a response to the letter that they provided to government regarding these concerns also. Thank you.
I'll give it to the Honourable Member for Clark. Oh, sorry, there's 2 members. Sorry. It's Ms Burnett.
Decision.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise this evening to speak about the issue of road safety. Everyone recognises that safety on our roads is so important, with the rate of incidents, injuries and deaths still occurring a cause for deep concern. Like many critical issues for our community, there is no one easy fix to make our roads safer. There are numerous factors that are behind what we're seeing on our roads, and of course there's a range of great programs that are already underway. However, there's always more to be done. And last week was Road Safety Week, and I joined with the Minister for Transport as the Greens spokesperson for transport at the launch of Road Safety Week. And of course there were the founder of Safer Australian Roads and Highways there at the national launch at TMAG. And it was pleasing to see that road safety received prominent media coverage. Representatives from across the political spectrum and from all levels of government were also making this a focus. But we need to make sure this focus and the words we've all used is reflected with a year-round commitment. So as Greens Transport spokesperson, I'm particularly keen to take a positive and constructive approach to this issue to make sure it stays on the community radar and to feed in suggestions of where improvements can be made. One area we believe that there is a real opportunity for improvement is road safety around schools. And to be clear, we recognise the many significant measures that have already been taken over the past few years to make things better. But if you talk to parents at many schools, they'll still tell you they have concerns. And quite often it's those people who are so close to their community, who know the roads very well, that have so much of the intel or intelligence on what's happening and the dangers. Whether it's unsafe intersections, congestion and traffic congestion and traffic that cause unpredictable car movements, people still going too fast through school areas, issues with bus drop-off locations and crossings, areas where the same problem crops up time and time again, or something else we know where there's problems. This is especially true around school pick-up and drop-off times. Last week I was at South Hobart Primary School with Greens counsellor and local parent Gemma Kitsos, who could readily identify a range of road safety concerns around the school. Of course, this was no surprise. Everyone who takes a child to and from school knows the area well, but all too often these local insights are only discussed between parents at the school gate or in the home. People don't know the who, what or how of bringing up such issues with those responsible for fixing them. The Greens believe there is a real opportunity for improving road safety around schools in particular by drawing on that local knowledge and the insights of people who are interacting regularly with specific infrastructure or a particular area. Drawing on this knowledge can give us a better sense of how things are working on the ground and help us identify possible changes. And I did write to the Minister responsible for Transport in relation to this. On behalf of the Greens, we are putting forward an idea to the government to set up and promote an easy-to-use, centralised, dedicated way for parents and school communities to report road safety concerns. This is an important step that could be taken to improve our understanding of what's really happening around our schools. It's also a great way of increasing the awareness around school safety year-round. We believe using a single, well-promoted app or website for all schools where parents, the broader school community and locals can feed in what they're seeing that could have some big benefits. There may be some immediate quick fixes identified, but over time the government and other relevant bodies will be able to build an understanding of commonly identified school and local issues. This could include infrastructure, signage, education, changes to car movements or speed or other measures. The Greens believe this is an idea that could make a meaningful difference to road safety around schools, and we hope the Minister for Transport will give it real consideration. After all, it is the safety of the most vulnerable of road users and to the benefit of all when we make our roads around schools safer. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister Barnett.
Thanks very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and pleased tonight to pay some tributes to some very special people and organisations, firstly on the occasion of the bicentenary of the Supreme Court of Tasmania, to pass on my congratulations to the Chief Justice, Alan Blow, and the full sitting of all our Supreme Court judges, together with Chief Justices from various other jurisdictions, and together with a special tribute from the Chief Justice of the High Court of Australia on the occasion of the ceremonial sitting of the 200-year anniversary of the Supreme Court of Tasmania. Through you, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Supreme Court of Tasmania is the oldest Supreme Court in Australia, and it was a very special event last Friday, the 10th of May. The Supreme Court was created as the Supreme Court of Van Diemen's Land by the Sovereign under the Third Charter of Justice and commenced activities on the 10th of May 1824. The first sitting of the court, it administered the oath of office to the Attorney General Gellibrand and to William Sorrell as the first registrar of the court. It also admitted George Cartwright, Hugh Ross and Frederick Dawes as practitioners. All were admitted as barrister, attorney, solicitor and proctor. The first person to be tried before the Supreme Court was William Tibbs, who was charged and convicted of manslaughter. At the ceremonial sitting of the court, it was addressed by the President of the Australian Bar Association, Mr Peter Dunning, KC, President of the Law Society of Tasmania, Ms Julia Higgins, and the President of the Tasmanian Bar, Tom Cox, together with myself. It was an honour to make that contribution. Ms Julia Higgins' remarks provided some interesting facts and statistics regarding the court, and I believe are worth reflecting upon. Ms Higgins indicated that between 1824 and 1831, the Supreme Court admitted an additional 21 practitioners, and up to today, 5,584 practitioners have been admitted to the Supreme Court of Tasmania. I'm one of those. Ditto. Yes, ditto from Minister Abetz, and indeed many others. So Sir John Pedder was the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Tasmania, and he served from 1824 to 1854. Since that time, there have been 13 Chief Justices of the Supreme Court of Tasmania, with the current Chief Justice Blow, having held the role since 2013 and having been admitted as a Justice of the Supreme Court in the year 2000. There have been 42 puisne judges of Tasmania in its 200-year history. Women were not allowed to practice law in Tasmania at the time of the court was established, and were first allowed to practice in the state in 1904. However, it was not until February 1935 that Miss Nancy Helen McPhee was the first woman admitted to practice in the Supreme Court of Tasmania. And I should note that I was admitted to the Supreme Court of Victoria on the 11th of April 1984, and likewise to the High Court of Australia 1984. And so, yes, I'm giving away my age totally. And some many years later to the Supreme Court of Tasmania. It was a special day, all robed up and in a wig, and it was, my father's best friend at school admitted me in the Supreme Court of Victoria. It was a special day. The first woman appointed to the bench was Justice Tennant in 2005, followed in 2009 by Tasmania's first female magistrate, Justice Helen Wood, and then in 2021, Justice Jago. While most aspects of life in Tasmania have changed markedly over the last 200 years, the important role the Supreme Court plays as Tasmania's highest court remains unaltered. And of course, the separation of powers with the executive, the parliament and the judiciary is really clear and evident today, and the independence of the judiciary is incredibly important. And if you contrast that to other jurisdictions or countries, including the USA, where there's such a strong political influence in the appointment of judges, it highlights the importance of the role of the judiciary being independent and impartial. And I think we can take great credit in Australia for the fact that it is independent and we don't have those similar sorts of concerns. So I just would like to share that thought with you. I want to pay a tribute to Stephen Escort on his new book, which I have in the chamber today, From Convicts to Computers, 200 Years of the Tasmanian Supreme Court, which, as the title suggests, traces the 200-year history of the court up until the present day. Yeah, I hear some giggling. I've been reading it, it's fascinating. Yes. Oh, you were holding it. Oh, I'm glad you were holding it. I wouldn't consider it was a prop. There we go. And of course, we're celebrating Law Week next week, starting on the 20th of May. I'll be hosting an event in the Parliament House of Tasmania in honour of our legal profession and Law Week and the important role that it takes in our year, our legal year. And likewise, a special commendation to the Legal Profession Board, to the Chair, Kaz Pitt, and the board members and those involved. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention, and before I conclude, just to pay a tribute to legal aid in Australia and in Tasmania, 50-year anniversary, and we'll be hearing from Kristen Wiley next week on Tuesday in terms of the role of legal aid. I say thank you to all of those volunteers in the legal profession who support legal aid and those involved in legal aid for the work that they do. They do a wonderful job. And finally, to Minaj Fernando, Migration Institute of Australia in Tasmania, who received the award from the Law Society of Tasmania at their annual dinner, which I attended some months ago. Early Career Lawyers Award, and looking forward to presenting a special certificate to Minaj for his contribution, his wonderful contribution here in Hobart, and to pay credit to him next Tuesday. So looking forward to that opportunity and to pay those tributes today in the House. I thank the House.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Clark, Mr Willey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm going to enjoy this new format of adjournment speeches. It's different to what I'm used to. We call it special interest speeches, and it's a different time of the day. We used to call it that. Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise tonight to talk about a very special organisation in Hamlet, which is a cafe and commercial kitchen and catering business in South Hobart, which is a social enterprise. And I was fortunate recently to attend the opening of their commercial kitchen on the 4th of April. They have a wonderful landlord who offered the next door site at a very agreeable arrangement, and the state government kicked in $250,000. I spent some time last year lobbying members of the government for that funding, and I think it reached the Premier's office before there was a decision made, but a very pleasing outcome, no doubt, that opportunity was realised for the organisation. So congratulations to Emily Briffa and Matt Rao on the board. There's some very qualified people on the board there at Hamlet, and their mission is to empower the underrepresented and to build skills and independence so that they can display their abilities in an employment setting. Not only do they support Tasmanians who are underrepresented in the workforce, they create more inclusive workplaces, Madam Deputy Speaker, in our beautiful state. Last financial year, they assisted more than 45% of their graduates to secure employment in the open employment market, in the tourism and hospitality industries, and they've built great partnerships to build a pipeline of employment for their clients with large-scale employers like Mona, Mac One and Banjo's Bakeries. And Banjo's Bakeries is a good one because there's so many of them around the state. It's easy to place people in work near where they live, particularly if they've got mobility issues. So great partnerships, great businesses helping great Tasmanians who are trying to live their best lives and develop their employment skills. They recently had Creek and Ford do some economic analysis, $28 of economic benefit generated over the working life for every dollar spent on training at Hamlet. On the opening night, Madam Deputy Speaker, Michael Shaw spoke. Michael spoke about his life before becoming part of the Hamlet family, he would say. He had anxiety, he had a stutter, he was socially isolated. He was supported by Hamlet significantly to improve his life to the point where he spoke at his grandmother's funeral, which was a huge moment in his life for him to be able to do that for his grandmother. And he spoke about how proud he was and how much personal development had been facilitated by the people at Hamlet. I was fortunate to visit recently again with the opposition leader, Dean Winter, and Ella Haddad, the other local member for Clark, Labor member for Clark. And we walked in the door and there was a very enthusiastic fellow behind the coffee machine. And he sort of said, "Hi, Josh. You might not remember me, but I know you." And I thought, where's this going? He said, "I did some work on your house a long time ago as a plumber with my dad, and I played a game of golf or two with you." He said, "That was prior to me having a stroke and nearly losing my life. I've had huge changes in my life since I knew you, and I just thought I'd introduce yourself and say that I love this place. I love being a barista here. It makes me have a different outlook on the world." And that he was really enjoying his time there. That's James Mackey. It was great to meet him again, to hear his passion for the work that he's doing at Hamlet, and he seemed much loved in that environment by his fellow co-workers and the people supporting him at Hamlet. So it was great to bump into people like James. He's a great example of the sorts of people that Hamlet is supporting. Back to some of the economic analysis, $8.1 million of economic benefit has been generated by Hamlet's 2023 trainees, or will be generated by their 2023 trainees over their total working life. And $120 million of economic benefit estimated to be delivered by all 723 Hamlet trainees over their total working life. So we're investing in people. The state government has a partnership with them, which is great. Some of their funding runs out in October. Members of the government, particular ministers, can only encourage that they continue to support this great organisation. They do have other ambitions too, like a state government social enterprise strategy, more advocacy at the national level. It's a very competitive market, social enterprises, and potentially some amendments to the Treasury instructions for the Buy-Tas, which could include social enterprises. But I just rise tonight, if there are any members of this place or in the public that are hosting an event and you need catering, please reach out to Hamlet. It's a great investment in people. It's a really feel-good way to cater an event. And there is great economic returns and jobs and people living happier lives. And I just wanted to rise tonight to commend the work they're doing and let them know that they've got a friend in me.
Awesome. The Honourable Member for Franklin, Minister Abetz.
Many a coffee and a lunch has been had at Hamlet when I had an office further up Davey Street, so it wasn't too far away. And I commend the member for Clark for a very uplifting speech. But the reason I rise is to refer to the member for Clark, Ms Johnston's question earlier today in question time regarding the government's review of the Living Marine Resources Management Act 1995. A review of the Act commenced in 2021. A discussion paper was released in 2022. It sought stakeholder input on contemporary fisheries management issues. I'm advised that a summary of the consultation feedback has been published and the government will be considering issues raised in determining any future fisheries reforms. As the new minister, I'm determining the way forward in relation to this matter, and therefore there's no end date that I can provide to the member for Clark at this time. I thank the
Thank you.
House.
The Honourable Member for Clark, Mr Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise this evening with a heavy heart to speak about the enigma that is Lindsay Tuffin. Lindsay was a giant of a man, both literally and figuratively. After health challenges and a gradual decline, Linz, as he was affectionately known, passed over the horizon earlier this week. Amongst many, there's been an outpouring of sadness and stories on the news of Lindsay's death. In talking to friends and colleagues, the adjectives that describe Lindsay have been truly eclectic. Amongst other things, he was a machine, brave, larger than life, non-compliant, anti-establishment, a vanguard, and cracking good fun. Linz grew up at Marrowa on a soldier settlement block and both expressed and demonstrated a profound love of Tasmania. Any interaction with Lindsay usually involved a tale of adventure and action, most often on wheels. He was an avid cyclist, famously settling into a recumbent and churning through hundreds of kilometres in an effort that left him invigorated, lean and fit. And at over 6 feet tall, this kept him an imposing figure with a big voice and a boisterous bearing. He was a true character, a gentleman and a colourful raconteur. Motorcycling was a passion, undoubtedly for the exhilaration, but some might be justified in asking if it was just for the leathers. Perpetually dressed in black leather with a beanie, this added to the imposing and introduced an element of outlaw, always overshadowed by class, sass and mischief. Lindsay's legacy is undoubtedly in the media. In an era before social media, Lindsay spearheaded an alternative approach to media that bypassed the mainstream and gave voice to those struggling to get airtime or with access to none. In 2002, he founded Tasmanian Times and offered a platform to publish with few filters at a time there were no others. Anti-censorship to the nth degree, Tas Times published pieces and allowed comment-based debate through a period of political time that many consider some of the darkest in living memory. This was the era of guns, with its arrogance, entitlement and absolute capture of Tasmania's body politic, media and other machinery. In the words of Bob Brown, I quote, "He gave us exposés about the corrupt, bigoted and downright nasty figures who blight Tasmania's future for their own advancement. His Tasmanian Times put a brighter light in the cavern of politics and business." Tasmanian Times was influential and broke the stories the mainstream media wouldn't touch. Many followed though, and as far away as France, Le Figaro picked up stories of Tasmanian travesties and published them in their sorry, sordid detail. For 200 years, much media in Tasmania had run on silence and fear, but Lindsay refused to cower to powerful forces and believed in truth and the discussion of truth. In February 2006, just before the calling of an election, Tasmanian Times ran the story that everybody in the media knew, but no one would touch: the Premier's house. It told the tale of a Premier of the day receiving kickbacks from the construction company subsidiary of Tasmania's monopolistic logging company, seeking political favours to build the biggest pulp mill in the Southern Hemisphere. A pulp mill that would trash forests, pollute air, poison people, dump toxins into Bass Strait, and was traded for a reno on a heritage house in a great Tasmanian political saga that was never to be told, if not for Lindsay Tuffin. He was brave, forthright and uncompromising when it comes to scrutiny, accountability and the right of the public to know the truth. Prior to and during the establishment of Tasmanian Times, Lindsay worked at the Mercury newspaper, editor of the Sunday Tasmanian for a period of time. Lindsay dedicated his life to a vibrant media that asked hard questions of power and printed the answers. While much in Tasmania has changed, much has stayed the same, and while the characters have changed, in many cases, the script hasn't. While there'll never be another Lindsay Tuffin, we need more journos like him, committed to the story, capable of telling it, and willing to do so. My condolences go to Sue and all of Lindsay's family and friends. Tasmania is a brighter place for his being. Lindsay leaves a legacy of extraordinary journalism, diligently delivered in the face of power and establishment. He was loving, lovable and much loved. He will be sorely missed, and I wish him well in the world beyond. Vale Linz, and thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Josh Willie on his outstanding inaugural speech today. In making my contribution, I actually forgot that Josh was new to this House. When I thought about our new members, I remembered Meg Brown and said she was a great addition, and of course I forgot Josh Willie because he's been with us for longer than me. And frankly, he is the member of the Legislative Council that was always destined to come to this place. He's much better off here, a much better fit in the House. He is looking forward to the fight, and we're looking forward to having him here in the right place with us over the course of this term of Parliament. I rise tonight to talk about an issue that I'm really passionate about, which is racing, and particularly those participants up in the northwest who have been let down badly by this government. The northwest racing industry is the home to about a quarter of the industry, and unfortunately they have been let down by this government and by the recent announcement of that the government will no longer go ahead with the northwest track. This is a project where the circumstance is that they were happy at the Devonport Showgrounds, and the government promised them that as they left the Devonport Showgrounds voluntarily, as Tas Racing voluntarily ended the lease, that they would build them a brand new track. And that was more than 2 years ago. And it was only on the 8th of May that the government finally came clean and admitted what I'd been telling the industry up there for a long time was going to happen, and that was that they weren't going to go ahead and build the new track. During the election campaign, they continued to say, both the Premier and the then Minister for Racing, Felix Ellis, continued to say that they wouldn't build it at any price, but they wouldn't say they wouldn't build it. They wouldn't just admit the truth. And it was only on the 8th of May that the returning Minister for Racing finally put out this statement and said, "The Tasmanian Government acknowledges the decision by Tas Racing to not proceed with the proposed North West Tracks project." It wasn't Tas Racing's decision. Tas Racing was going ahead with the track. They asked this government for more money, and this government wouldn't provide it. They wouldn't provide the money that was needed to keep the greyhound racing industry on the northwest coast going at the election in the last budget, when they knew that if they didn't provide that funding, the greyhound racing industry on the northwest coast would die. And with the decision on the 8th of May, the greyhound racing industry is left with only a few trainers who are having to travel for hours and hours and hours. And as Ben England told me today, every time he takes his dogs to Launceston, he loses a day's work. And for someone like him, who's a plasterer, full-time, has his own business, this change puts enormous pressure on him. People like Robin and Gary Johnson, who've been doing this forever, who've got Olsen Pet Foods, who make an incredible contribution to the northwest economy, who've had all of that ripped out from under them because of the decision by this government to close down greyhound racing in the first place 2 years ago, and now not commit to a new track that allows it to keep going. For the harness racing participants, the hard-working, phenomenal harness racing participants, President Claire McDonald and her comments that she made to The Advocate, the interview by Alison Jarman, the Mayor of Devonport, but speaking on behalf of herself as a participant, and the emotion she showed when she talked to ABC Radio about what this means, the devastation for the industry because of the decision by this government, covered up to pretend as though it was Tas Racing's decision. It was this Liberal government that let the industry down. They have killed off the greyhound racing industry on the northwest coast, and the decision puts enormous stress and pressure on the harness racing industry, Minister. It does. It leaves only Bernie and Carrick, and it leaves people like the Davis family, Steve Davis, who's having to travel and spend hours and hours and hours in the car. People like Brodie Davis, who's looking for more opportunities to drive in this state, but are being let down by this government, let down again and again and again. And today I see the absolute schmozzle of the Murray Review and the first interim report of stewards established to examine and further investigate the issues raised in the Murray report. Whether you follow racing or not, you know about the Murray Review because you've seen the complete and utter shambles of the handling of these complaints. The ABC report in the first place. The ABC report that uncovered in a couple of weeks what Ori had not been able to identify for years. There was a massive cover-up. There was huge integrity issues in the racing industries which had been covered up for years but were outlined and found by a group of journalists who did the job of Ori that it had refused to do under 10 directors of racing in about 10 years, hadn't been able to do until a bunch of journalists decided to ask some questions. And then the former Minister for Racing, Madeleine Ogilvie, stood up in this place and said racing had never been in a better place. Then we had Minister Ellis, who received the report that said there was race fixing, there was team driving, and there were massive animal welfare issues perpetrated by Ben Yole Racing, and then he let Ben Yole keep racing for another 2 months without doing anything. Not a single thing about it.
All you do is talk everyone down.
There we go. Talking everyone down. Ben Yole Racing was perpetrating animal welfare breaches under your watch. Minister Ogilvie, under your watch, and you did nothing about it.
I ordered the Murray Review.
You did nothing about it. In fact, you ordered Ori to investigate itself, and then the Premier, Premier Rockcliffe, told you to do that. That's exactly what happened. You did nothing. Through you, Madam Speaker. This former minister
we will stop
did
interjections.
nothing.
Thank you. Through me.
Instead of finally acting when they got the Murray Review, they did nothing for 2 months, allowed him to keep racing, and it took Tas Racing to stand them down. And when this minister came back, Minister Howlett, she finally came back to the ministry. She said, thanks to Tas Racing. Well, it was Tas Racing that stood up because former Minister Ellis had refused to do anything about it for 2 months and said that there would just be an investigation and was happy to let Ben Yole Racing continuing on, even though he knew about the animal welfare breaches, he knew about the race fixing, and they let them keep going. Harness racing in Tasmania is an integral part of our community and it should be allowed to continue, but this Liberal government keeps letting these industries down, and I desperately want them to finally step up and fix it.
Call the member for Lyons, Ms White. 434.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to talk about the local Relay for Life electorate events in my electorate of Lyons that are run by local communities in both Tribunna and Sorell, raising funds for the Cancer Council Tasmania. Cancer Council Tasmania's Relay for Life events bring together communities to celebrate survivorship, remember loved ones lost, and empower teams of families, friends and colleagues to raise money to fight back against cancer. The Tribunna Relay for Life was held recently on Saturday the 6th of April. And I want to congratulate everybody who participated. Chairperson Sophie Murfitt said, and I quote Sophie, Tribunna Relay for Life was organised by myself as chair and the Rotarians of the Rotary Club of Spring Bay who helped on the day of the event. The 2024 Tribunna Relay for Life was a huge success, bringing together over 200 relayers and raising over $52,000 for Cancer Council Tasmania. The Sorell community are proud to bring Relay for Life to their community on Saturday the 5th of October this year. And those in this place may be familiar with the chairperson Joe Birch, who has a personal connection to the importance of raising awareness of cancer, having lost his beloved mother just 3 years ago. And Joe says, Sorell Relay for Life is being organised by passionate local volunteers, and each relay event is an experience that will stay with you forever. With memorable moments celebrating survivors and carers, we honour those we've lost through a moving candlelight ceremony as we raise funds that stay in Tasmania to support Cancer Council Tasmania. Madam Speaker, with 10 Tasmanians diagnosed with cancer every day in our state, I'd like to recognise the important role these Relay for Life events play in fighting back against cancer and making a tangible difference in the lives of people affected by this disease, whilst urgently highlighting the need for support and action. If anyone would like to participate or support this in the Sorell Relay for Life, you can find details about that on the Facebook page and register ahead of the October event. In closing, I would like to again convey a massive congratulations to the committees of Sorell and Tribunna Relay for Life events for their continuous commitment to this great cause. Their work is changing the lives of people impacted by cancer across our state.
Member for Bass.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to respond to Minister Ellis's proud claims this morning that the government would be tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime to protect people. What a disappointing, outrageous and uninformed response to the question raised by Ms Badger, the member for Lyons. We face a difficult situation with social breakdown and an increase in antisocial behaviours, and we definitely need to address these issues. But being tough on crime will not protect people. Instead, locking young people up will increase their sense of alienation and do nothing to address the underlying causes of difficult antisocial or criminal behaviours. And I note the contradiction in what Minister Ellis said this morning, saying being tough on crime on one hand and locking young people up, while being tough on the causes of crime to protect people. But we know that the causes of crime come from the things that I spoke about yesterday in my inaugural speech. We know that when people experience intergenerational trauma, intergenerational poverty and disadvantage, they are deeply affected by that, and it has an impact on them for the rest of their lives. We know the effect of trauma on young people. They experience the world as unsafe and live in a constant state of threat. They struggle to regulate their emotions and manage their behaviours, and they have incredibly low sense of self-worth and carry around a deep sense of shame at all times. And all these effects of trauma are what lead to difficult behaviours that can be unpleasant and unsafe. Being tough on crime is not the correct approach to respond to this, and it will only lead to more trauma, and we have seen that that is what happens at the moment in places like Ashley Youth Detention Centre. Being tough on crime will only lead to more trauma and a repeat and escalating cycle of misdemeanour. As more shame is triggered in these young people, they have an increasing lack of safety. We have to look at the root causes of criminal behaviour and dig below the surface to identify circumstances that have led to them and respond to the needs these behaviours reveal. I know from my fostering that we use a model in fostering called PACE, which is like an approach, a therapeutic approach to caring for children. P stands for playfulness, A stands for acceptance, C stands for curiosity, and E stands for empathy. So PACE provides a sense of safety to children and to young people, and that therapeutic approach is much more effective in helping them recover from the trauma that they've experienced than any kind of strict draconian response would ever be. And I think that we can expand that model of PACE and think about that more broadly at a systemic level and think, what are we doing for the young people of our state to help them to feel safer, to help them have their needs met, for them to feel cared for and valued. And once we start to address those issues, we will start to see changes. They might take a while to come through, but we will start to see changes there. It's not just me saying this. The Commissioner for Children and Young People describes the government's tough on crime approach as a blatant disregard for the rights of children. And the Commission of Inquiry has made strong recommendations which focused on the need for therapeutic approaches to youth crime. So I guess I would call on the government to lay down their tough on crime approach. It's not going to work. And maybe to put more emphasis on their tough on the causes of crime comments and actually do what's necessary to make things safer for our children so that they are less likely to engage in criminal behaviours. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Franklin, I believe you are exempt from the new members rule because you don't need to give another first speech.
I don't need to do another new one.
Thank you. I call the member for Franklin, Ms Petruda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This week is Neighbourhood House Week 2024, which is being celebrated from the 13th to the 19th of May. Now, I know we all in this place love neighbourhood houses because they're just such a wonderful, place-based solution. And Neighbourhood House Week is an annual nationwide initiative that celebrates the over 1,000 neighbourhood houses, community houses and centres right across Australia, with this year's theme being Stronger Together. This week, neighbourhood houses are encouraging members of the community to come together to participate in simple acts of togetherness, whether it's a shared meal, a collaborative project or just a friendly chat. And across Tasmania, neighbourhood houses are hosting a variety of events that aim to bring together community, to weave stronger bonds and to explore the incredible strength that emerges when we stand side by side. Now, Madam Speaker, the neighbourhood house model in Tasmania is now around 50 years old and today consists of 35 houses. It has the largest, most diverse community service footprint of any non-government organisation in Tasmania. They are also community-led organisations that are strategically located to lead and coordinate community development in areas of most need and to build capacity using a community development framework. Each house works towards 4 goals: to connect community, to support people, to create opportunities and to foster local leadership. And I know, like other members in this House, I'm a frequent visitor of the neighbourhood houses in the Franklin electorate, as they are the heart of our community. They bring people from all walks of life together to connect, learn and play. And through collaborative initiatives, inclusive programs and shared spaces, they cultivate an environment where every voice is heard, every story is valued and every member contributes to the vibrant mosaic of our shared community. Now, in Franklin, our neighbourhood houses have been very busy this week and have hosted or will be hosting more events tomorrow to bring the community together. And on Monday, the wonderful Rugby Neighbourhood Centre hosted an Empower Yourself workshop. And tomorrow we'll host a community barbecue, while the Geeveston, Risdon Vale and Lorraine Mornington neighbourhood centres are also hosting community barbecues. And tomorrow I'll have the pleasure of attending the Lorraine Mornington neighbourhood centre, where House Manager Ben Cooper and his team do an amazing work for their local community. And I'm really looking forward to supporting this family-friendly event tomorrow afternoon that'll include face painting, garden games and a delicious free barbecue. And very pleasingly, the Warrane Mornington Neighbourhood Centre, which incorporates the Warrane Community Garden, was successful in receiving a commitment this election for its Hood in the Hub project, which will invest in the sustainable construction of a building for the garden, utilising sustainable design principles, while also serving as an educational tool for the community regarding environmentally friendly and sustainable construction and structure design, as well as provide a much needed new facility for the community centre and the garden. Now, over the past decade, the Tasmanian Liberal Government have been one of the biggest supporters of neighbourhood houses, and this support will continue, with the government making several commitments at the election to further support and enhance neighbourhood houses in Tasmania. We will boost funding to all neighbourhood houses by $50,000 a year, so the houses can continue delivering for Tasmanians at the forefront of their local communities. And I acknowledge that Minister Jensch is here tonight. The trial of the place-based Community Connector program for neighbourhood houses has also been another initiative of the Liberal Government, with a pilot involving 11 connectors. The trial comes to an end in June 2024, and we will be providing ongoing employment for the 11 community connectors, as well as begin a stage expansion to deliver even more community connectors across Tasmania. We'll provide $6 million in new capital funding over the next 3 years to ensure all houses are fit for purpose and contemporary, and also we'll extend for 2 years the current trial of a new mobile bulk build GP clinic, which will deliver up to 4,500 additional appointments a year. The program, delivered by the Morton Group, will provide walk-in bulk build GP services in 4-hourly clinics 5 days a week, and will operate on a rotating roster that visits neighbourhood houses in New Norfolk, Clarendon Vale, Gagebrook and Chigwell, the Salvation Army in Glenorchy and Flint House in Newtown. The 2-year expansion begins at the end of 2024. Madam Speaker, I extend my grateful thanks on behalf of everyone in this House, as I'm quite certain that every member in this place is very grateful to our neighbourhood houses for the wonderful people that work in and around Tasmania's neighbourhood houses, and also for the immense work that they do each and every way. They contribute so much to our communities, and they make a significant difference to the lives of so many Tasmanians.
Any further speakers on the adjournment? Before putting the question then, I just want to make one quick statement. I want to thank the parliamentary staff, the clerks and all of the people who work in this building for the excellent start to the parliamentary session that we've had. Everyone's done a lot of work to make sure that we can all participate here and do our job. And can I also commend all of the members for the exemplary behaviour we have had during the first week. Long may it continue, because spending time outside the chamber is going to be less fun than being in here. And with that, the question is that the House do now now adjourn. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The House stands adjourned.